laser engraving is a big part of the firearms industry and just like custom work in general. I've got Jeff Stockton with me today, and he owns a laser company and has been a go-to for me on learning my fiber laser. And Jeff, main thing a lot of people ask, I get the questions at gun shows, I get them on my channel already, is what kind of laser should I get for what I'm doing?
This is a good question. It's such a broad, it's not really defined to one machine for this or one machine for that, but obviously everybody wants to be more versatile. But in the firearms industry, generally speaking, fiber lasers are the go-to. Then you got the wattage question, lenses. So lots of different things. If you want to do deep engraving, faster, you generally want the larger wattage with a smaller lens. But then that's like the bull in the china shops, kind of hard to control.
So like for me, when I started out, I went with a 30-watt fiber laser because my main need at the time, which has changed with the regulations as usual, was compliance engraving. My plan was to build AR-15s, and I wanted to do that legally, which at the time required me to add my manufacturer's marks to that gun. And through my research, it seemed like a 30 watt was the lowest wattage I could go. But I've since found out I think a 20 can do it. It's just going to take longer. But a lot of people in the industry get 50s because they want to do the more fancy stuff, which I had no interest in doing at that time, but I'm probably going to try to get into that here soon. But what are like all the different factors, budget, the type of gun, the frame, and then just the other stuff that you can do depending on what wattage laser you get. And then there's different sources. I've seen stuff about color on things and all those different options.
Sure. So I'm trying to go in the order in which it was received there. So there are 20 watt lasers, and they'll do anything that a fiber laser will do. And that's really what the main difference is in the wattages is time to do the same amount of work. But I'm kind of on the fence on whether or not that higher wattage is better in the long run, because as I mentioned before, it's like the whole bull in the china shop thing. I strongly believe that the 30 watts probably the most versatile laser for firearm engraving. Now, it does take a little bit longer to do the same average, run-of-the-mill engraving. But I also believe that you generally have an overall better finished product because, you weren't sledgehammering it the whole time. Even if you were giving it all it was got, it was still tink, 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 tink. It wasn't just full on. So, there's a saw for almost every job, and you as well, yeah. Right? So, if you're doing flooring, there's 16 different kind of flooring saws. If you're doing framing work, there's 12 different kinds of saws you need on a construction job. Blah blah blah. And so, if you would apply the same principles to a laser, that's kind of in a nutshell. You really got to say what kind of construction. Well, I guess in this would be deconstruction, but what kind of deconstruction are we doing? If you want to do just the polymers, like blocks and SIGs and Springfields and a few other ones that can mark, a lot of them don't engrave well, but you can mark about a lot of them to get different colors on the frame. When I say different colors, different shades of tannish gray, like the same setting markings that you would get on like a PMAG, for instance.
Okay.
But I do believe the 30 watts probably the most versatile. If you went any bigger than that, I probably wouldn't go much bigger than 50 watt. Because I keep going back to the bull in the china shop thing because they're just really hard to control, or not control, but it's just really hard to understand what's going on because there's so much power.
So what are the limitations of a fiber? Like, is there stuff it can't do?
Yeah, so there's a lady called Robin Roberts. Her she has a magazine for laser engraving. It's called Laser Focused Magazine.
Okay.
I wrote an article in there you guys can check out. But I put an analogy in there. If it used to breathe, then the fiber doesn't work well on it. And,
okay, so like organics, like wood?
Yeah, so wood, shells, glass, because glass is made of sand. Sand is made of crustaceans. Over the eons of years, they've been, what have you, blah, blah, blah. So the fiber is definitely, good for metal. It does do well on a lot of the plastics. But it does not do well at all on wood or glass. There's some tricks. There's definitely tricks to get this stuff to happen with a fiber. But it's pretty convoluted and very unpredictable.
Yeah, like I've seen stuff with glass, like people have said use foil or paint or some combination of it to direct the heat or something like that. But I tried it and I could not get any results. So I can't imagine, what it would take to get that honed in. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's so much technique involved in that. Like I actually have some of the spray stuff here for a CO2 laser, and you're supposed to store it upside down. For whatever reason, but this little baby cans. But even with this stuff, it's really hard to create consistent results because are you a little bit heavier on this object than you were on the next one? Was there a 20-minute lull in between the time you sprayed them? It was like, did I do 3 coats or 4? Even with this, it's a trick.
And that's on glass with a CO2?
Well, glass. That was actually, sorry, I picked them up, didn't read them. One of them is like black on stainless, and the other one is for glass, ceramic, brick, slate, and more. So,
but that's for CO2 though.
That
not
is for
anything to do with fiber.
Right. I was piggybacking on what you said, like with the paint or something.
Yeah,
because
fiber
that would be the same type of parting.
Yeah, because fiber can get a really clean mark on stainless, right?
Absolutely, you don't need this at all. I was just alluding to the fact that with like painting, trying to do the glass, it would be super hard to get consistent results because you wouldn't be unless you were robotic in the application of the paint.
So one of the other things that I know I've struggled with, and I think I bought the wrong one, but adding a rotary to your fiber to be able to do stuff. Yeah, that's what I've gathered because there's different prongs on the back of your machine, and then just getting the software to work with it, knowing the diameter of your product. So if you're wanting to do something like that, is fiber the right machine?
So the rotary on a fiber is an additional machine. I trained hundreds, if not 1,000 people at this point. And I tell them all the same, that it's an additional machine. You need to learn how to mark stuff on the flat real good before you worry about going around on the curve. Just like when you are painting a gun, it's much easier to paint not intricate stuff than it is to do really small parts with a lot of cracks and volutes and everything else that you don't want to fill up with Cerakote. So it's the same type of party with the laser and the rotary. You got to be able to do a whole big thing before you can do the small stuff. And I do believe the rotary is like a head banging machine that you have to learn after you know the fiber, because what the tricky part about it is a lot of the stuff that you learn when marking flat stuff doesn't carry over into the rotation world. And so that's why I said you have to learn how to do the flat, because the principles remain the same, more or less, but the way the laser reacts, because what a lot of people don't understand is these things only have 2 outputs on the card, right? So it can only drive 2 motors or what have you, and the mirrors in the head, the galvanometers is what they're called. That's your 2 outputs, your X and Y. And when you plug that rotary in, all those different prong plugs you were talking about, and most of they have aviation plugs is what those are called. And But most of them are 4 wires. You got 2 channels, A and a B, and positive and negative on both of them. And I mean, one of them's a feedback channel, the other one's actually stepping in. There's drivers involved, so lots of little bitty stuff behind the scene that'll make you know, if you don't really have a deep understanding of kind of how rotational devices work, the rotary is going to be super, super tricky for you. Unlike on the CO2. The CO2, they've really, and even now, actually take that back a little bit. Now with Lightburn coming out on the scene, Lightburn does have a better handle on the rotary, but a lot of these lasers are come with EasyCAD, so that's kind of what I was thinking about there. But the rotary on Lightburn has that sanity checker, and that's always nice.
Yeah, EasyCAD, I know, kicked my butt when I first started because it's just not intuitive to a native English speaker because it's Chinese, like literally Chinese. I know the one that came with mine, the owner's manual was in Chinese, and I don't remember who I got the other version of EasyCAD from, but I got a different version of EasyCAD and I also somehow somebody gave me an English manual. So like I was able to get that thanks to the groups on Facebook, but like I guess that's another thing is where should somebody get their laser from?
Well, that's a good question. Well, of course, it's over there. I keep a couple of these bad boys in stock, but I try to set them up for gun shops. But if you're an import one from China, there's lots of folks. Pascal Lu is probably one of the most trusted names in the business as far as sending $4, $5, $6, $8, $12,000 blindly across the pond to somebody. So he's well known. Most all my lasers came from him, and I actually have a UV laser on the way as of yesterday from him.
What's that going to allow you to do that you can't already do with your variety of lasers?
So the UV laser is a different wavelength from the fiber and the CO2. Wavelength being, in a nutshell, intensity of light. That's kind of what that really means. The UV operates in a wavelength that's right in the middle of these guys. And so it does really well on organic stuff, really clean marks without a lot of burning. If you can think of the UV, it's the concentration of the sun, technically, in a very confined area. So it does its marks with photo degradation. Kind of like if you've ever laid a towel over a chair in the backyard and forgot it for a couple, 3 weeks, and you pick it up, the back of it's nice and red and the front of it's pink. And that's photo degradation from the sun. That's kind of how the UV operates. So it will mark glass and wood and some metals. You can get, like this black on stainless. It's about effortless. But I can do this on the fiber also. But it does really good for that and glass. So I kind of want to go after my bridal market in this area. We have a huge bridal show once a year, or maybe twice a year actually. But I know they do it in February, so I just missed it, of course. But I'm like, hey, I'm gearing up. I'm not going to miss the next one.
Right, you've got 8 months to plan.
and tinker around with this bad boy too, because although I'm pretty versed in lasers, I'm kind of just as new as anyone else would be when this comes out of the box. The only advantage I think I'll have is being able to hook the computer up to it like that. But a lot of people don't want to spend their money across the pond, whether it be China or Germany or wherever, you would get a laser from. But most of them all come from that way by some avenue. So it's really hard, even if you wanted to, spend your money with an American company like, Boss or Thunder or any number of American laser companies. You're really just paying double the price for American support when you're awake. So if you're a night owl, then it's definitely not in your best interest to buy from an American company.
But on that note, there are I'm going to say third party, I mean you,
Sure.
support and help and train
Sure.
on the lasers. So if somebody wants to save some money up front and they're comfortable making that purchase and waiting that lead time, because it does take a while for that stuff to get across the ocean, they can always get with you and do training, and you'll walk them through setting it up, and or even some of the videos you have out on your Facebook channel, or your YouTube channel.
Both well, yeah. I mean, even so, I got this bad boy right here. This is a 50-watt JPT, and we actually, I kind of skipped over. You said different sources a while ago, and we did that. But yes, to answer your question, there's guys like myself, and there's a plethora of people on Facebook, and like Jennifer on YouTube. There's a wealth of knowledge that you can just go and watch over and over and over for sure, and get the stuff. But you're very right. As far as to piggyback off what you said though about sources and whatnot, that's a JPT, and you got 2 or 3 different sources. The main ones are Raycus and JPT. There's Max sources too, which is pretty much like a Raycus. And a lot of people want to downplay the Raycus as to be inferior, which I guess by certain standards that it somewhat is. But in the real big scheme of things, it's not, because it's a fiber laser and it does exactly what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, mine is a Raycus source, and I haven't had any issues that weren't user issues.
Well, so I guess the easiest way to explain the whole Raycus and JPT thing would be like power windows and power seats.
Okay.
That I guess, I mean, that's really because they're just so much alike. The frequency, now don't get me wrong, the frequencies are very important, right? The JPTs have a much larger range of frequencies, and sometimes those sources you can manipulate the pulse in between the frequencies, so it would make you seem like you were just in supreme control of this machine, but really, if the math ain't mathing, it'll sit there and let you think that you're doing something that you're actually not. It's like I explained the other night, when I was training, the frequency band on a JPT is, on some of them are 1 to 600. We'll just go with that. 1 to 600 kilohertz. And he had his laser on 10. And so I went ahead and put it up on 50 and defaulted it there. And he was like, well, what if I want to engrave a coin? And I was like, this is the best that you'll get out of this machine, even though it says it goes up to 600, or down to 1 to 600. It's like, oh, look at this guy. I have a company.
You're being recorded.
Yeah, you're being recorded. Are you okay with that? All right. Audio and visual. You have to give consent.
Well, he has to actually say something for it to be audio.
Yeah, she said you have to say something for it to be audio. Say what's up. No.
No.
But so back to what I was saying, the JPT will allow you, to put it all the way down to 1, but it tells you in the manual, if you can find the English one, it tells you in the manual that they won't let it go below, like I think it's 42 or 43, behind the scenes.
Right, and I know, like on mine, I think I can go like 30 to 60 on my 30-watt Raycus.
Should be 30 to 60 or 30 to 80. Yeah,
and that I thought was interesting because it's a multiple of the wattage, I guess. Is that how it is?
I don't think that works out that way, because I've got a 20-watt that is also.
What are they doing?
80. Oh, yeah, stop that. Oh, he's done. He was moving drinks around in my fridge.
Okay.
I didn't get it to close.
Oh, he couldn't get it to close. All right, so he's going to beat it into submission with his foot, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, it's kind of like, I explained it like your volume knob in your car. Most cars these days, you can turn it and then it goes up. You can watch the little thing go up on the screen and it says max volume
Yeah.
But you could just still turn that thing forever. You know, if you didn't see the max volume thing, you may still think you're turning it up and up and up and up and up and up. You know, so that's kind of the frequency thing.
Yeah. So they have hardware limits basically, and no matter what you tell the software, it's gonna.
Yeah, because JPT says that if it goes below that, then it will absolutely self-destruct and beat itself to death. That's kind of what it says in the.
So it's kind of like a limit switch almost, but an internal one in the hardware.
It's a digital limit switch. That's exactly right.
Yeah,
okay. For sure. So you can't overdrive it because a lot of people don't understand how frequency works. But in a nutshell, the lower that number, the more aggressive the laser is. So it's frequency by definition is cycles per second, and so the lower the number, the least amount of times per second you're asking it to do the same job. So it can do it harder and more efficient because it's doing it less times per second. So you start raising that number up, then it's more times per second you're asking it to do it, which overall diminishes the effect that you can get.
Okay. So, to me, I have recently, I think, finally gotten addicted to lasers. I have my fiber. I ended up picking up a diode because I wanted to do some organics. So that's another laser type. And it works on a gantry system with a head, so it's a little bit different for me. And then I actually ordered a smaller CO2 that's supposed to show up tomorrow.
Okay.
And
now, what kind of CO2? Like a K40 type?
Yeah, OMTech, whatever it is. Yeah, the little one, their least expensive one, just to get my foot in the door with CO2. Because
they're great. There's something to be said about that.
My main thing was cups are huge and popular, and I tried doing cups on the fiber, and it's kind of a pain in the butt because one thing I've learned about fiber, and this is kind of more generically, is different colors, regardless of what it's on, come off different. Like pens, the stylus pens that people see everywhere. Black, easy. Red, pain in the butt. And it's just crazy to me that you're cutting through the same amount of material, but you have to have different settings for the different colors.
There's a pretty easy scientific explanation as to why.
I'm going to guess it's the reflectivity of the color with
yes.
to the laser.
Not so much reflectivity, actually, as the acceptance of.
Okay. So absorption kind of deal?
The absorption of it, and it's based on the colors of the rainbow, in my opinion.
Okay.
Because red is the hardest, and orange is not very far behind it, and yellow, and then all the way through, you get into green. But then, for whatever reason, when you get to blue is right back as hard as red in most instances. And then I
haven't had that. I haven't had that with blue. Blue and black, to me, are the same. At least on mine. Yeah.
So, nope. See, because your laser and lens combo is different, and I guess we'll link this or however to the YouTube channel, but I've got that video on tolerances, and it's I think it's just like one of the better videos that I did, and it's just talking, and it's really, like you said, you don't have a problem with blue. Well, you're using this specific lens with a 30 watt, and in that video, there's tolerances and everything. I mean, I work in the industrial world. We look at a print, and I can say, oh, this has got X amount of tolerance, so it doesn't have to be right here. It could be within this much, or what have you. And same thing with these lasers. That source gets thrown up on the table and gets hooked up, to a fake laser, and it gets put an output into a meter. And if your laser is 30 watts, then it very well could be 27.1 all the way up to 32.9 by industry's digital 10% standards.
Gotcha.
And so, and so you go to sharing settings with your comrade who's got a 30 watt. Well, let's say that his is the 32.7 and yours is 29.4. All right. Well, his settings wouldn't work for you at all in the same amount of time. In your settings, he would absolutely burn something up. and because he's got an extra 2.5, 3 watts that you don't have and can never achieve because your source isn't. It passed it within 10% of 30, but it's not even 30. His passed within 10% of 30, but it's more than 30.
I think that's probably the best way that's ever been explained. I've had people say every laser's different, and they just leave it at that.
Well,
and it's true. It's true, but the why, and nobody's ever really put it in those kind of terms to me before. But that makes sense because if you're building a gun like an AR-15, you're going to have tolerances between your upper receiver and your lower receiver. And if
your trigger well.
And if one's on one end of the spectrum and one's on the other, you're going to have a whole lot of play between those parts. Yeah, exactly. So same kind of concept where honing those settings in for the material is very laser specific. And you can get people in the ballpark and give them some guidance, but they're going to have to test on materials.
You truly will have to burn it to learn it for yourself. I mean, there's no way around that.
On that topic, let's talk about, like, you do this as a side job, but that's just because you're kind of like me. Our day jobs just are too good to walk away from. It's a weird dichotomy to be in, like I would love to do this full time, but my day job is just too good to walk away from. So
I guess one of the things, like, you got the fish on the line. You're like, like, come on, let's go. It's time to go. And you're like, well, hold on. What do you mean?
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of where it's at. But, like, I don't do near as much work as you do because I'm still new at it and I haven't put as much into it as you have. But it's something I'm actively trying to grow. Actually spun off a separate business entity from my gun business because the firearm industry is under such ridicule that I wanted to be able to grow the custom side independent of the gun license. So I'm wanting to get into that, which is part of why I got the Diode Laser, I got the CO2 Laser coming in. As somebody trying to get into the laser business in general, how do you find jobs?
That is a very tricky subject. So, I don't know where to start. That's a good question. That's such a great question, and I don't know where to start.
I'll set you up because I've watched every video on your channel at this point because we're trying to team up on this and do something here.
Sure.
So you did a video about how you got a check for $6,000. And it was like the third check from that particular customer. And you credited that all to a cup.
That's true. So that was, like I said, I don't know where to start. Because I've tried so many different tips and tactics on how to gain business. So a lot of people in this industry are a little bit, I don't want to say narrow-minded.
We're talking the laser industry now, right? Or the custom industry, not the firearms.
Or the custom, this is the custom industry in general. Whether it be, some lady doing crochet dog tuxedos, or
which probably does actually exist somewhere.
I'm sure. I seen a commercial where there's a lady that is turning dog hair into. She's spinning it like Rumpelstiltskin, with the thing, and she's spinning dog hair into yarn, and she's making things and selling on Etsy out of dog hair. But I think I lost track. It's we're talking about the maker industry.
Yeah, but that's a good word for it. The maker industry. Yeah,
and I think makers in general are only kind of worried about doing that with that one custom piece or that thing, which this is what we do, right? And I don't want to downplay. I just have a different mindset because I come from the production world. Okay, I've been a production technician for close to 15 years now, and I mean, like, we go to Coca-Cola, they make 1,250 bottles of Coke per minute. per line. And so when you see those kind of numbers in front of you every day, I think we even talked about it yesterday. Or
yeah, we did, because my industry is producing water, and my customer needs 3,000 gallons per minute.
A minute, right? And so, and so, what I mean by the maker industry is, we're chasing the cup, and I want to chase the cups, and so that's kind of what I tried to set myself up for. Sure, we'll take on, somebody calls, hey, I need some cups for a wedding. Absolutely, in that video, or one of those videos, I said you need to align yourself with other people in your community in which that y'all have some similar interests. And so I found the other 2-3 folks in my media area within 15-20 minutes of my house that have similar lasers and rotaries and whatnot. And I farmed the wedding cups out, unless it's 50 of them.
Yeah.
But I need a Mr. and Mrs. cup. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, we'll take care of you. No problem. What color? This, that, and the third. And then I get on the other phone. Hey man, I need 2 cups. And I know everybody won't be in that position, but I would much rather make the $6 or $8 that I'm going to make off of him than to deal with the design work of doing 2 cups, because I've got
right and
jobs.
That was going to be where I was going to take you next, is the design side. So, that is such a big part of this industry.
I implemented a $55 shop minimum. Somebody calls me up and says, how much for 2 cups? $55. How much for 10 cups? Whatever, right? But it really does weed out of the people that, don't, because a lot of people understand, hey, this is custom. I'm asking, this is art. This is art, right? And so, the same type of party. And it works out pretty good if you can implement a minimum, because at least if you are, if they're wearing you out for, well, here's case in point. This is why I started doing this. Lady calls me up, and forgive me if you see this video, if you know what I'm talking about. But lady calls me up, and I use the wedding cups as an example because that was a scorn. I was just bit hard. Long story short, she called me up. She sent me a screenshot of what she wanted. I was like, okay, cool. So I kind of draw it, it's pretty much 97% accurate opposed to the screenshot. I don't like the way the M looks. You sent me the screenshot. This is what you said you like. I said, okay, cool, whatever. We fixed it. Anyway, 3 hours. I was charging her $30 for 2 cups. I spent 3 hours, not including the time that it took the laser, not including the 15 minutes that she was late showing up, whatever, right? And so we went back and forth. But finally, at the end, and these were wedding gifts for her boss's daughter. And I had asked her, and I was like, well, how long you known them, whatever. And she was like, oh, well, this is my boss's daughter. She was a bus driver, and she said, I'm taking the wedding party or whatever it was. I was going to get them gifts. I was like, oh, that's very thoughtful. It's awesome, super cool of you. And after we go back and forth for almost 3 hours, I texted her. I was like, man, with all due respect, you said this was a gift for people you don't even know. I think they're going to love it. Let's go with it. And she was like, you're right. And that's kind of what I did. But to get back to your question on how to get the money, it's not going to come to you. If one thing I've learned is people don't even know that we exist as far as laser engravers go. And there's lots of people that don't even know that, people coating guns. Yep. I mean, I talked to a person yesterday that talked about all these guns they got, and this and the third. And he's like, you know anybody that reblues barrels? And I was like, yeah, I do. He's pretty far away, and it's terribly expensive. Why don't you just paint it? And he's like, paint it? I ain't painting my gun. And I was like, no, I mean Cerakote, Duracoat, gun coat, something of that nature, ceramic coating.
Yep.
It's tougher than it. I'm like, it's tougher than hickory knot. And he's like, well, I don't never heard of that. This, that, and the third. So same case in point. But anyway,
yeah, and even that though, even Cerakote has so many applications. It's crazy. I have my first automotive customer that's going to be bringing me some stuff. Now, thankfully, he's building his vehicle, so it's not something that's stupid, contaminated, or whatever. But it's okay, yeah, I can do that. And people just don't understand how versatile some of the stuff that the firearms industry has just kind of like grabbed a hold of and just really latched onto, so much so that people think that, well, that's what it is. Like, that's a firearms thing. And it's just not. It's just, we've gotten creative and we've expanded out of what we do. Like, for me, with the fiber, once I no longer had to engrave guns, and even before that, I'm like, okay, what else can I use this $4,500 machine for? And because it's a $4,500 machine that's sitting at my shop.
And these are making me $4,500.
Right, hardly being used. And so, first thought was, okay, what other gun stuff? Because I'm in this mindset of guns. And did PMags? You mentioned that you get a nice tan mark on PMags if you get your settings honed in. If you have the wrong settings, you have some blemish ones. You can still sell those, but
you could sure them.
Honestly, I just sell them as blems. People will spend $10 and you
$10,
get you get your cost back, and they have a range mag. And then I'm like, okay, well, another popular thing is the back plates for pistols, and I sourced some of those, and they cost me less than $1, and I sell them for $10. You can't find them online for less than 15. So I sell a bunch of them at gun shows. And if somebody wants something special on it, if it's a standard image, I mean, it's one thing custom artwork. It's another thing if it's like a logo that's out there, or like a letter or text or something like that. So
a flag on it.
Yeah, something that I already have. Okay, yeah, sure. No problem. If I know it's gonna take me like 2 minutes, I'm not gonna charge them an artwork setup fee. But then I expanded to the wallets, which I actually have a whole bunch right here. And these things are also great. This one is one I just did. I had to redo my artwork, so the text is off just a little bit. But I sell a bunch of these at gun shows. And they're great gifts. They're inexpensive. And no matter what business you're in, if you can do stuff that costs a customer $20 or less and have it there for sale, you're going to sell that stuff all day long, because a lot of people don't want to leave empty-handed.
Well, you've got to sell, though. That is, like, I want to go back to what you're talking about, getting the money. Like, you've got to sell it, because people don't even know we exist.
Right.
And so and the check you're talking about, I think, to date, that was STC. I think to date I've made close to $30,000 off of them.
And is that mainly just cups?
Well, both cups, water bottles, those wallets they use as business card holder.
Right.
Chargers, keychains, those knives. The knives was a huge order. Those were, it's like I charged them $75 a piece for 81 knives, I think.
Yeah. Well, and like, I mean, I'm moving right now, which is good, but it's also like kind of bad, because apparently my brick and mortar store in the other town comes up first on Google for engraving in our area. And exactly. I found that out around Christmas time. Not that we do a whole lot of it that's not gun related, but
if you're going to do it, if you do it all, that's good.
Yeah, a guy ended up bringing in like 30 or 40 Benchmade knives to get his company logo put on.
Ooh.
For Christmas presents for his clients.
That's awesome.
And
that's a big money as well.
My
big money items.
Yeah, my employee was like, I don't want to ruin one. And it's like, we got the settings, dude, you're fine.
It's a week check. That's a week's paycheck. Don't mess that up.
Yeah, well, and this particular customer, his logo was an outline with some curvature in it, but just outline and like R2 or something like that. It was like not even a complex logo. It was a very simple logo that was literally a drop it in, trace it, done, and then go.
That's pretty awesome.
But you know,
To
it's
finish the cup thing, though, that all came about me just walking into there one day. I stole their logo off of the interwebs.
have you ever had anybody get mad at you for doing that when you're giving them a product?
I have not. I am sure that I will come across that person that's having a bad day. But for the most part, psychologically, people get stupid excited when they see their logo, their brand, period.
Yeah.
Maybe as an afterthought, some of my customers are like, he's got a lot of nerve, but it worked out, or whatever. But more times than not, you know what, though? I bet you all the people that haven't called me, maybe I did make them mad. I don't know. but because there's been a lot that haven't called me. And then so...
But a lot of that could just be they don't have the budget for it, or they don't see a purpose for it, or
Sure,
something like that. Because,
considered.
I mean, I don't know how often your phone rings with somebody trying to sell you something, but it happens to me a whole bunch. Like
More than I want, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the life of being a business owner. So it's kind of like we got to put ourselves in our own shoes on the other side of the table, you know.
Oh yeah. But that all came from dropping off a cup. That was it. It was cut full of candy. Dropped it off. Did a little research. Knew who he was. Put his name on it. Dropped my card. Slot full of coffee candy. And then it was like, hey, I want 25 cups. And then, oh man, everybody's seen those cups. Can you do water bottles? And then it just snowballed into that huge knife order. They had won some type of award.
Like a safety award or something like that?
It was a safety award, and it's only given out to one company of thousands in our state, per state, or whatever it was, and they won it. So that's why we even did that huge knife order for. But that was that's a Cinderella story. But yeah. there's a plethora of them. I just like all those knives I did for the metal company that I get stuff from. I went in there as a customer to buy risers for my fiber lasers.
Okay.
Because most of the fibers come with 50 centimeter towers, and if you use a 300 or more, you need 800 or 80 or 800 millimeters, 80 centimeters. And because the ones from China are a couple $100, whatever, and I was trying to find an inexpensive solution, so I went up there, bought some metal from him, and he's like, "What do you need this for?" And I tell him, and he's like, "Oh, that's cool." And so I ordered it then, and he said it was going to be in a couple, 3-4 days. And of course, he was like, "Oh, that's cool, right?" That's what he said. And I was like, "Oh," took a business card with me, came home, did the thing, went to go pick the metal up, and dropped off like the credit card style bottle openers because I figured I needed to do something metal.
Yeah,
right? Because I mean that's what
it's a metal shop. So, yeah.
Yeah, and so I took some of the black anodized business cards that I sell, and I recreated his business card that I took and made him about 10 of them and a handful of those little bottle openers with just his logo on it. Took it back up there, and then I've been burning stuff for him yearly ever since. He'll order, $2,000-$3,000 worth of stuff, and just say, and it's all to give away to vendors and whomever. It's all promotional stuff. He said that the main reason he buys cups from me is because a lot of people call him looking for donations for a 5K or Little Susie's, where we're raffling off something for Little Susie's got to have surgery or what have you. And he's like, "Oh yeah, come on up here and get a couple of these cups, or whatever." And so he said that's what he mainly uses them for is to give away to other people as promotional items that are asking him for donations on whatnot. And so he's like 2 birds with 1 stone. He gets to advertise, and he gets to help with whatever cause it is that they're pushing at the moment. So I was like, that's actually a pretty cool idea.
Yeah. Well, and like my diode, my main attraction for that, wood was part of it, but honestly, leather was really why I wanted to get something that would do organics. And
I just got a whole case of hats.
Yeah, exactly.
Like an entire case. It's huge.
Yeah, so I was playing around with leather and doing hats, and thankfully I know a lot of small business owners, and I had a friend of mine, a plumber, was coming to my house to fix some stuff from a freeze back in January or February that we had temporarily patched. And before he got there, I was like, "Hey, send me your logo." And he did. He doesn't ask why. They never do. Just like a buddy of mine that owns a restaurant. He if I ask him for something, he doesn't. He just sends it to me. So
Right.
sends me his logo, and I make.
Well, you are a woman who sells guns. I mean, there's not a whole lot of people's going to argue with you or ask you questions. Okay.
But so he sends me his logo, and it's a round logo, so it's very easy. And I cut it and I burn it, and then I glue it to this hat. And I think I botched it. It's the first one I did. First hat I tried to do. And I'm like, the glue was like everywhere. Like I'm thinking it's just ruined, right? Well, I put it over, I set it upside down, and I weighed it down after having it on there. And he shows up, and I tell him, like, yeah, man, I tried to make you a hat. I mean, I think I wrecked it. And I show it to him, and it was fine. Yeah, it was amazing. Like, it was like, okay, it looked like absolute crap while the glue was setting up, but it set up just fine. So, that's an exciting prospect for me, is being able to do those leather patch hats. And yes. And I think that the CO2
and they're
will let
huge.
me do that. Yeah. And the
they're
CO2
huge.
will let me do that as well. So I'll be able to do that on both sides. And then like slate coasters. And underselling. So pricing your product. Let's talk about that a little bit. So I sell like the wallets that I do for $20 a piece when they're marked. And those are designs that I just came up with and put on whenever I have time to put
That's
on.
a good price.
You know,
I mean, that's 3 times wholesale, like retail price. My dog has come in here and decided to push me out of the way.
Yeah, so for me, I get them a little less expensive. So I'm making pretty good margin on those wallets. But then also,
or even 4 times, 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, it's in that range. If you're taking your time to source your material, that's about the range.
Yeah, I mean, if you wait for I mean, they come from China. You can get like maybe $3, $4, $5 a piece, depending on how many you buy. But of course, it's that boat. It's that boat ride. It takes like 194 days. Or whatever.
I get them for under 5. I get them between that 4 and 5 mark. And I can get them within 10 days.
Oh, that's right. We talked about that.
Yeah. So I got lucky with first supplier that I contacted, and I can order up to 200 and have them in 10 days.
Oh, well, they're so cutthroat over there. I mean, they're going to do any and everything. That's really good to have in 10 days. So that's fantastic.
Yeah. So it's 10 days from payment. There's usually a little bit of a lag because, the time difference and everything. But, so to those people looking to source from China, just from my personal experience, message the people. Don't just order blindly on Alibaba. Message them and tell them what you're wanting. And
in my experience with Alibaba, it sucks. I got robbed.
I've had good luck, but I've always started with small orders. I've always started with small orders. So, now, like this one that I get my wallets from, I got some wood ones.
Those are expensive.
No, not from my supplier.
Yeah, are they dark or light?
I've got both. I got 4 different kinds of wood.
Oh, fantastic.
I got them in a box right here at my feet. I'm going to show you. Okay. Got walnut. I think. Hold on. Flip my boxes around. Yeah. Walnut. Cherry.
Beautiful.
And then
have you done any with the diode yet?
Not yet. That's on my list to try today or tomorrow. Where's my other colors?
Yeah, those will be fun. And now, does your diode run in light burn?
Yes.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's good.
Beechwood.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, so I'm excited about about this. And then she sent me some.
I was sorry to interrupt, but I just thought, because the diode doesn't use any type of air, right? It's just straight. Or does it have an air assist of sorts?
It has one you can attach to it. And I'm just gonna say this, kind of. I'm going to say off the record, but on the record kind of a thing, is don't spend the money and get the air assist from the laser people. Buy yourself an aquarium pump.
Yeah, there's a vortex pump that works really. I think it's called vortex.
Because all it is pushing air, and it just helps keep the stuff from getting back up in your laser.
Yeah. What I was going to say, though, if you didn't have that air assist, I wonder if the diode would do the whole... powder coating thing. Are you familiar with how you can do engraves? Okay, engrave the material away, and then don't move it, and you take powder coating, and then you fill it in and wipe it off with a credit card, and then go back over it at a lower power or whatever, and it adheres the powder coating into the wood where you had engraved.
I think it does, because I'm in a couple of forums. And a guy had something like that. He put some black powder product down, and then it stayed in the grooves, and he just cleaned it, and it was good. Yeah.
Dude, look into that, because if you did that with those wallets, right, and you did, just do an American flag, or if you just did the blue stripe, or the red stripe, or a green stripe, or any kind of stripe on an American flag for first responders or whatever.
Yeah,
there's all kinds of the possibilities,
red line, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that. But so so that was kind of why I got the diode, was okay, wood and that stuff, and then it can do slate, but my fiber can do slate, so I can do it on both.
You pick and choose your battles.
Yeah, it's gonna take longer on the diode, but I would feel comfortable putting like 6 coasters in at a time. And telling the diode to go, because it's slate, it's not going to catch fire, it's not going to be a burn hazard or whatever, and it can be working while I'm doing other stuff, and it's like a 0 time cost kind of a deal. It's working. Right. It's just doing its thing. Yeah. But yeah, there's just so many different options out there that I'm still exploring, because I'm addicted. It's really that simple. I mean, you were telling me you've got 7 fibers?
Yeah, I did.
Plus whatever else you have? But
yeah, you can't sit. There's some of them over here on the table. I can't. Oh, my computer ain't going to make it. But you can see one. You might be able to see 2. There's the top of one over there on the other. Then I made room right. Where's my finger? There.
Under the flag?
Yeah, and I'm going to put the CO2 there next to Justin and Jason. Justin and Jason's my 2 little...
the 2 little dudes. The 2 little, slow down, don't hit my kids.
Yeah, and so we took the CO2. I don't know what we did with them. I think we threw them away because they broke. But I took my CO2 and cut out, I cut out ARs that I could slide down onto. I slid down onto
the flagpole.
Yeah, and of course I painted them bright orange, but it looked like they're both holding, AR-15s.
How did that go over in the neighborhood?
Oh, everybody! I mean, obviously everybody knows I sell guns. I'm the good neighbor to have, right? Like everybody's like, oh yeah. And so it was a great showing. We've actually been only at this house for like 6 weeks now, so that's why this garage is still semi-clean. But
yeah,
as I was telling you before we got started, I've got a couple of shipping containers where 90% of my stock went for the blank bank. Filled up the better part of 2 shipping containers. So now I have like room to breathe in my garage, whereas it used to, like, you literally had to move stuff for 20 minutes to find something. And you're like,
yeah, so we bought a new house, and it's got a 2-car garage, but it is literally a 2-car garage, and none of our vehicles are cars. So like none of our vehicles are actually going to be able to fit in our garage. So we've decided.
How coincidental,
right? Yeah. So Now I've got my laser stuff inside upstairs.
Well, you told me you used to look at it upstairs.
Yeah,
Like, bless your
well,
heart.
and I got creative with my camera's up there. I don't know why I'm turning my computer. I got creative with my venting. I cut cardboard and I have it up behind the window with my exhaust fan in there.
Yes.
So it's exhausting outside, but then I can just like raise the window, pull the cardboard out, put the window down, and I'm good.
Put the window back down,
Yeah. And so I don't get any of the smell or anything in the house, and I don't have near as many as you do running. But the garage, and part of why I brought the lasers up here is we're going to put our Cerakote operation in the garage.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm directly above the garage, so I definitely won't be able to do any videos while my partner's downstairs Cerakoting. But we measured everything, and all of our equipment's going to fit. And
nice.
we have like almost the top of the line recommendation equipment. So like,
you know how I figured out how all my stuff was going to fit?
You put it in there?
I put it in a Lightburn.
Okay, you use Lightburn as a modeling software?
Yeah, because Lightburn has what's called a nesting feature. It's a third party organization that you get redirected to, and what it's for is like if you were just cutting a bunch of shapes, a bunch of different sizes, and you had one big piece of wood, and you could say, oh hey, nest this, and it would orient and figure out the best exact possible way. It would start weaving stuff.
So it's like auto Tetris?
Yeah. And so what I did, because I did it the first time, and then what it did is it put all this stuff to the one side, and then I have this huge big open spirit. I was like, well, that ain't good. I was like, well, it'll all fit. I was like, I want to see how much space I got. And I was like, so I just kind of took a box and made it roughly the size of what was over there, the empty space, which would be the saved wood that it didn't burn.
Yeah.
And I made another box and then redid it, and it put that box pretty much in the center, and then it put all the stuff out from around it. And so it's actually pretty close to exactly the way that the AI or whatever depicted it to be.
Yeah, but like if you're talking your lasers, like they're not as big as my 4-foot by 4-foot oven or my 4.5 foot by 5-foot blast cabinet or my 4-foot by 4-foot paint booth.
I don't know. This one right here is pretty big.
Yeah, that one is. Yeah, I don't play at that level yet.
Yeah, so like this, this is me standing up next to it. But I have a bigger one than this. This is what we call the LFL, and I've got the BFL. I've got, well, it's not a small number. It's like a $11,000 job. The reason that my big laser isn't over there in that hole right there where all that pile of crap is right now is because it's still at where we were. And because I have this job on the line right now that I've already started. And unfortunately, it's a piecemeal job. So this is for a production facility, and we're making go, no-go tables.
Okay.
And so these tables have, they sent me the artwork, and I had to recreate it because Lightburn would not read the program. And we did a couple of them. Like I said, it's a piecemeal thing because they're using them. They're in production. They're all, so they're only giving me 2-3 at a time because they're all being used. And so they're sacrificing, 2-3 stations until I can get these done, turn them around in a week, and then he drops off 2 or 3, and I give him the ones I did, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to risk moving that laser right now.
Right.
Because until I get all the way through that job and provide consistent results, I'm not moving that laser. So, but in any event, yes, you're right. The 7 lasers, well, actually, that is the wrong number now. I had one die. Rest in peace, 50 watt JP2. But it was my oldest laser, and that's the one that we left it running on 3 or 4 different occasions for more than 100 hours. Just eating through brass. And we made some medals for the Oncology Society of India. We got paid like some bukus of dollars for it. But they were huge. And so the lens I had was taking forever. And on that one, the one was well over 100 hours straight. Like it ran, the laser was
for one engraving?
Mm-hmm. One side of that engraving.
What were you engraving that took that long?
Well, it was the field. It's because it was so large. It wasn't, and because in the fiber world, the larger your lens, the weaker the laser beam is.
Right, just like your magnifying glass trying to
with the
catch stuff on fire as a kid. Yeah.
And so if you had 2, 3, 4, 5 different size magnifying glasses, depending on where the angle of the sun is, if it's I can't see my hands, but this big around, it's going to have the circle like this is going to catch on fire. But if the magnifying glass is this big around, then that circle is much smaller. So yes, it is the same exact principle. And so therefore, it took an exorbitant amount of time because it was like 7 inches. It was, we got a piece of 5mm brass that was, I think, 8 by 8. And we cut out the metal too. We cut out the metal because it had to have the hanger for the, it was a
medal or whatever it was.
Yeah.
A medallion.
A medallion. There you go. And so the actual thing was only like 4 inches, but it had to be so big because of that thing that the
clasp.
I'm struggling. I can't think of like the ribbon or the thing that like a lanyard. There you go. Okay. So the lanyard goes around or what have you. But it was all in the metal itself. Medal. MEDAL. Metal. And that's what it was so big because that was part of the profile. And that made it was over 6 inches. And it took forever because it was that big. And it, of course we wanted it to look good because it's going to be polished brass.
So something like that, like, I mean, I'm not asking what you made. That's neither here nor there. But like,
$800.
Did you know? So you made $8 an hour?
Probably. Yep. That's about right. Yeah. So but of course I didn't stand there with it. So right, I have.
But I know, like, on the forums and stuff, a lot of people are like $1 a minute of your laser runtime. Like, so like something like that. Like, did you know it was going to take 100 hours, and you just like were like, hey, okay, whatever, or you undercut yourself, kind of a deal?
So if I had to do it again, it would probably take about 15 hours because that was when I was super infantile. And these people found me actually on the Fiber Laser Facebook page. Okay. They had been stalking laser pages looking for the person to do their medals.
So awesome. on that note, and I've seen this, and because I've been trying to learn more about lasers and optimizing the artwork and optimizing the burn or the cut, whatever it may be. So I remember, I don't remember what channel I was watching, but he did a video about light burn and optimizing the artwork in light burn, and he cut the runtime down by like half just by changing the order that the artwork.
I think you may be talking about Robert at Computer Creations.
I honestly don't remember. I want to say Louisiana Hobby Guy, which he does a lot of. It may have been more wood or whatever, but he's done some light burn videos, and I was like, I get it, but I don't get it at the same time. Like,
so what he's saying, all right, and I'm a firm believer that is a terrible tool. It's not a bad feature. It's just not very good. But what he's talking about is if you optimize your settings in Lightburn, is if this were to, laser this hole, all these holes here, and the laser would come back and you know how it does, just like your diode would be pop, 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 right? Well, the distance in between these holes here is almost as great as the holes. So that means that your move time is twice as much as your engrave time, because you are moving twice as much distance as you are actually engraving. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So there's a setting in Lightburn that's called flood fill. And you can turn on flood fill, and what it would do is it would do that circle, then do that circle, then do that circle, then do that circle, and so on and so forth. So therefore, it
cuts
negates
out the
travel
head
time.
travel time going back and forth for your line spacing.
Yep.
Okay.
And so where you get into trouble is if you have, now like this, I would flood fill this all day long, every day, any day of the week, no problems at all. Where you get into trouble is if you've got graphics, because flood fill is very, very unpredictable. And the folks at Lightburn could probably chime in, and maybe there's a way to fix it, how it does its thing, but it will, if your laser is not just dead on, where it leaves off, it'll come back and it'll be like a half a line space off when it picks up. So it might, in some instances, you'd be flood filling right here, and it would stop halfway through this guy and then do this one for whatever reason, and then come back to this one. And then, but where it left off, there'd be like a slight line space. So I don't use flood fill at all, because you can see lines in the finished product.
Okay.
At least now, and that may not be every laser. Because I don't know a lot about CO2s. So that may be something that I very well myself haven't optimized on the machine. Timing settings of sorts. I'm sure that there could be. So
right, and in my brain, it makes more sense in a gantry type laser to optimize the artwork, because you want to reduce the actual head travel time.
Sure.
Where a fiber with mirrors, you're not going to see huge differences, I don't think. But how would you have gotten that job from 100 hours down to 15?
Very good question. So so I had to cut that medallion out, and I tried to cut it out with the fiber. That probably took the blunt of the time. And because two things. First, I was trying to cut a very small line, right? Because I didn't know any better. And two, my settings as far as engraving metal were not optimal. Because as before mentioned, I was pretty infantile in engraving as it was. I was pulling off some really cool and stellar stuff, but it was not by accident. But it was like not without heavy interaction after the laser. Like we're buffing or sanding or polishing or whatever to make something look good, because
right.
It looked like hammered dog crap when it came off the laser. And so just being able to optimize my own settings for metal engraving in general, I would exponentially have reduced the runtime on that. And that was one of those things. That was one of those in the beginning stage, because that was probably like in the first year of my fiber laser.
Which you've been doing this for how long now?
3 years and some months. So 40 months.
Okay, so you see, and I've been doing it about 2 years, but I haven't been doing it though, because my laser's been at my shop. It's not been at my house, so I haven't been able to tinker with it as much as it would like. And I think I'm starting to get the hang of it finally, but there's just so much to it, and just if you're not in it at the level you're in it, it's hard to stay on top of it. Just like even Lightburn coming out for the fiber, I was so afraid of changing, because I knew how hard it was for me to get EasyCAD and my files and my settings and everything honed in. And I'm like, do I want to start over? And it was, I finally did, but I did it like in a smart way. I installed Lightburn on a laptop, and then I connected the laser to the laptop, but I left my desktop that had EasyCAD. So I can still run it on both if I want to. Just that desktop's not at my house right now. It's still at my store. So I've been getting it up and running with my now desktop here on Lightburn because I have my laptop dedicated to the Diode, which it'll run both, but it's just easier for me to keep them separate.
Yeah.
But
well, I have one computer for every one of my machines, and Lord have mercy, I have mouses and keyboards and like stuff. It's chaos.
So
but it's really good. It's good to have production though. Like so,
yeah.
As I mentioned, I told you I just bagged those 2 Glocks. On that table over there, I will be able to, from conception of taking those guns out of the case to laser paint and putting them back in and presenting them, laser time, probably 4.5 hours for all sides of the slide and both sides of the frame and one magazine.
Yeah, and I've done some laser stippling, and now that I have it figured out, I understand that it's not as daunting as it was like the first time I put a frame under my laser. I'm like, I'm gonna own a 43X.
I know, that's right. Yeah,
yeah.
I know it's the nerves. And hey, you know what? Once those nerves go away, that's when you need to get scared. When you just throw one under there and not. That's the way I am now. Actually, and I just thought about that the other day, and I was like, I'm about to screw somebody's gun up because I'm too comfortable now. You know what I mean? Now because I've done enough to be scared so much, and I'm like, now of course, don't get me wrong. I had a guy come with, well, I told you the rings last night. These rings, unbelievable amount of money this guy spent on these rings. Now, of course, that's his love for whatever.
And did you do those on your fiber?
We did. We did
okay.
Do it on the fiber. Because I've got a chuck rotary, a ring rotary, and then of course I wired up my pie burn for my mirror here. I wired it up. It's got dual plugs on the end of it, so it's got the mirror plug and it's got the fiber plug. So I can seamlessly switch between the 2 lasers with that one rotary. And that's pretty cool. Because the pie burn is a very, 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 very useful tool. If you ever get a CO2, that's number 2 purchase for sure. I would say buy it first, but it's specific to the machine you buy. So, you buy the CO2, but definitely buy the pie burn. I got an affiliate link. You can buy me some beer and save yourself some money. But they're great. I was trying to think of that grip they've got. Pie Burn came out with a grip now, which I think I might buy one just to see if I can get it to work on the fiber. So it would be fun. Do you have any painting projects coming up?
Nothing special. Single color stuff.
Yeah. Well, those seem to be the hardest sometimes too.
For me, they're easy. It's just ridiculously easy. I've done some cool stuff though. Like people know I do quality, and because of that, I get a lot of creative freedom. So, or I get a picture, and I'd prefer it either way. I prefer you want me to match this, or you give me a theme and a concept, and you let me do it.
And go with it, right.
And I've done both. And I'd say the one that I thought came out the best, and I don't know if you saw the pictures of it, I did an AR-10 for a guy. Upper, lower handguard, all the lower parts, and the barrel. And he's a firefighter. And he found a picture off the Cerakote gallery. And he's like, I want this. But I want this in the Maltese cross instead. And I'm like, okay. So it was a red AR, which I was not too keen on doing. But
right.
A battle worn, so I'm like, okay, maybe it'll look alright. But then he wanted the lower parts gold. and he wanted the Maltese underneath in gold. So I based the upper and lower in gold, stenciled, went over in red, and then battle warrant. And I also, on the lower parts and on the barrel, like, he didn't want it, like, bright. So I did dirty, I call it dirty gold. What I ended up doing is I did the gold, and then I dusted it with graphite. But just, like, super low setting where the gun was barely spraying. Just to give it a dingy gold look.
Looks like that, what's the Dark Horse, that video? She's dressed up as Cleopatra, and her skin is super, super gold, but there's a silver tint to the gold. It was kind of long.
But I just dusted it and put it all together, and that's, to me, the best project I've done, because it's clean and just beautiful, and it was a custom thing, but not like super custom, and it was great. And the flip side is I've had somebody bring me so I have actually more like repeat Cerakote customers in the Dallas area, which is 5 hours away from me, because I used to do gun shows up there than I've gotten from down here. And up there I've done 3 guns for one guy, and the first time I met him was on a Saturday at a show, and he saw our pictures. We didn't have a Cerakote display like we do now, just pictures of stuff we've done. And he went and, like, Instagram stalked my company page. And then he came back the next day with a PC charger. And this was when I was early on in doing my Cerakote work. And I had done a G19, I think, in Cryptek. Cryptek's like my jam. I do really good Cryptek work, so I get a lot of Cryptek work. But I had done this Cryptek job on a pistol in white, gray, and black. And he liked that look. So he's like, here's my gun. I want that.
Okay.
And he literally had me do every piece of his gun. And this was back before I knew how to charge appropriately. I'm like, this guy made out on those first 2 guns I did, because I had never done a PC charger. So, like, I didn't know how many parts there actually were to come apart. And then the second gun, like, so that one was a, hey, do this design. The second one he brought me was a Chris Vector. And
I don't know what that is. Very expensive gun?
It's like a $1,500 I'm gonna say novelty gun, but it's a solid gun. But look him up. But he just leaves me the gun and says snakeskin tan and leaves. Like, that was the only criteria I got, and I'm like, okay. And I always end up undercutting myself, like, the first time I do something new.
I think we all do, I guess, really. I'm unsure.
Yeah.
I still struggle with pricing, by the way. I mean, I always.
Yeah.
I think
well, and like, sometimes you just don't know. Back to laser stuff. I had somebody, their grandmother passed away, and they wanted their grandmother's handwritten recipe on cutting boards.
Yeah, how cool.
And I've never done that before. I had never done that before.
Right.
But so I got a new laser. I'm gonna play with it. And
the diode,
yeah, exactly. So.
And that's what that bad boy is made to shine, doing exactly that.
But the issue was how I got the recipe.
If it was somebody's grandma's handwritten, I'm sure it wasn't pristine, quality vector art they gave you.
Well, not even that. I didn't actually get the recipe. I got a picture of the piece of paper.
You got a picture of a screenshot of a photocopy from 72.
Yeah, I think it was a picture of the original, but I got a picture of it. But this recipe had also been like one line was in pencil. There were like stuff was scribbled out, and
we've revised the recipe as we went along.
Yeah, so I'm like, hey, I need you to actually tell me what the recipe is because I can't quite like make it out.
Right.
And they did, and it probably, and I don't know how, but it only took me like an hour to get it cleaned up. And I'll show you
Did you do it in Adobe or?
I did. I used both Photoshop and Premiere and Illustrator.
Okay.
So and I'll show you the before and after on that in the it's up here somewhere. I'll put it in the video. But
Sure.
It took me about an hour to clean it up. Once I sat down and was like, okay, I need to do this. And I'm actually surprised it only took me an hour.
Right.
Because of the condition that picture was in. It was a yellow, faded, lined piece of paper.
Notebook,
with
the yellow notebook paper.
Different colored writing with scribbles. Like, it was just a mess. And I've never put anything from handwriting to the computer before, other than like my signature in regular Adobe. But that's like you sign a white piece of paper, and then Adobe does its magic. So like I've never done the handwriting thing, and then that was my first tackle, and it wasn't as bad as I was expecting it to be. And I guess that's kind of where I was going with this is when you're looking at doing something new. I'm not going to say always say yes, because you should not always say yes. But don't be afraid to say yes.
Everybody's got to learn that in their own way.
Yeah, if you think it's a stretch, say yes. If you don't think you can do it, say no. But on the stretch stuff, just give yourself a little more buffer on the time. Because you don't know until you sit down. And then just communicate with your customers. And let them know, hey, I haven't done this before, but I'm going to give it a shot. We'll see how it comes out. And then if it's a new material, like that's one thing I see a lot of is if somebody wants you to do something and they're providing the material, do you, at your level now, do you require they give you an extra one?
No, so I think that's a novel approach, and don't get me wrong, and I'm an advocate for having a test piece. And in my experience, and I've done a lot of stuff. We've just marked all kinds of craziness. And some of them are very scary. Somebody brought a granddaddy's pocket watch. Want to get birth and death dates, graduation dates, or some other sentimental inscriptions on this. And there was other laser engraving on it that was 5-10 years old, however it was, that was done with this kind of spray, CO2 laser. And so I tell them right then, it's like, hey, I don't know if I'll be able to get it exactly like this, blah, 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 blah. And you struggle with price there. And actually, here's to finish the watch thing, I opened the back of the case up, and that particular thing, I put marked in America. And I tested with that 2 or 3 times until I got a really good black on the inside of the back of the case, and it looked very inconspicuous. It didn't say test.
Right.
It said marked in USA. Marked in USA. Right? Because it was indeed marked in the USA. I was marked in the USA. I'm sorry. So, but, flipped it over and, got pretty good results on it, right? So that was, and 2 things here, right? Your reaction, just like the hat, you were talking about the hat, and Dude Man showed up and he got all giddy. Oh my God. And you're like, yeah, well, I don't know if, and our psyche about the whole thing, man, that is huge, I think, huge psychological advantage, because I've handed stuff to people that I thought particularly looked like hammered dog crap. Mm-hmm. But when you hand it to them, you're like, look at that. How's that? That's great, isn't it? And they're like, oh my gosh,
Yeah, well,
So
the number of guns I've Cerakoted and been like, I don't know. But then I give it to them and they're like, oh my god, this is great, I love it. I'm like, okay.
yeah. So we're our own worst enemies in a lot of fashions. And then another thing I wanted to follow up on, and I got to get towards getting my babies in the bed, but I'm on that East Coast time.
Yeah.
But another thing I wanted to piggyback on, at least in how much do I charge for this, or where are we at on pricing or what have you. It is not against the law whatsoever to ask the person how much they're willing to spend.
Ask for their budget.
I don't use the word budget, right? Because I think that puts a cap on things.
Gotcha.
Right? So I'm asking how much they're willing to spend. In other words, yes. What's your budget? So, like, for the sake of conversation and educational purposes, yes. Ask the person, hey, what's your budget? And then the other thing is people will say, hey, I got this widget and I want XYZ done to it. How much? And you're like, it's just gonna. Like, if I say the wrong thing, I'm scared them off. Screw myself. It's not enough. Whatever. And so I found the super simple answer to that question: how much is it going to cost? And that is how much ever you want it to, and you will get what you pay for. And you have a little tact about you when you're talking, and like you just don't say, yeah, well, whatever how much you spend, that's what you get, and something. It's like the thing I say is, I'd like to think that we can work within anyone's situation. So if you're looking to spend $100, you're gonna get about $100 of stuff.
So my very first paid Cerakote job, somebody I know brought in a friend of theirs barrel for a Glock, Rival Arms fluted barrel, with a recessed hood and a comp on it. Yeah, and this gentleman was in the Marine Corps, and so he wanted USMC red in the flutes, but black on the rest of the barrel. And it's my first paid piece. Like, I've never freaking done two-tone on a single item. And flutes. So I did it. I figured it out, and I did it. And we kind of did an Easter egg. He didn't know I was going to do this part, but the friend that brought it, once she told me that he was in the Marines, I was like, do you want me to put a globe and anchor in gold on the hood? And she's like, yeah. So I based it in gold, just that one little spot, just gold. Right. Put the red over it. No, I didn't stencil. I used my laser. So it was like my first paid Cerakote piece. I did laser as well.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So, yeah. Super cool.
So I did this pistol barrel, with red in the hood with a gold Marine Corps globe and anchor recessed in there, and then red flutes and a red comp. And I had no idea what to charge. Like, I didn't even know where to begin on charging, because I hadn't even done my price list yet for Cerakote. And I'm like,
$150.
So I didn't even give a price. I gave it to her. I gave it to my friend. I'm like, give it to him. Just tell him to send whatever he thinks is fair. Because I knew they weren't going to screw me. It wasn't like a random person that's just trying to...
No, I love that trick. I love that trick. Well, you always generally come out better.
So he ended up sending me $180.
There you go.
Which was more than I was expecting. But I'm like, okay, cool. And I actually have another gun of his in my shop to do.
It's only got me one time. I am a huge advocate of, especially in death. That is my go-to in death, because I've done just a plethora of urns and memorials and coins and fingerprints on.
Yeah, and I get that. You don't want to take advantage of somebody when they're dealing with something like that. So it's like,
that's the first thing. How much? And I'm like, that's why I just throw the hands up. I'm like, look, and I'll say the same spiel to all of them. Like, these machines are paid for. I'm able to enjoy my evening with my kids and my wife or whomever the same type of person it was that they had lost. I was like, "Is payment enough? We're good." Because I'm needy, not greedy, right? I mean, I make money in a bunch of different ways, and so.
Well, and they're going to remember that, and they're going to tell their friends anytime that their friends need something engraved.
And a lot of them won't take no for an answer, and then of course that's what you say. It's like, well, you know what? Just pay me what you think it's worth. There's no wrong answer here. I told you not to pay me anything, so you really can't offend me by giving me something.
Yeah, and if there's not a photo, if it's just text, like there's
most of it's
there's minimal setup on that. Yeah,
right. Most of it's just super easy. It takes 5-10 minutes. Most all those urns are black with brass underneath or stainless underneath, so they engrave like stupid easy on the fiber, stupid fast. But hey, if you're out there to get paid for that type of stuff, don't get me wrong. That's a great thing. But that's just not what I go into. People are looking at me for that. So if you own like I have trained a couple of people who own funeral homes, and they specifically, try to sell their clientele those types of things. That's what they do. What I mean? So there's nothing. That's their thing, right? Yeah. That's how they keep the lights on, right? So if you're in that kind of business, by all means, I think there's there's a huge market for that. But I don't have the heart for it. I swear, Jennifer, every time I've ever done anything like that, I'll cry like a little baby, like there, just the whole time. I mean, just the whole time you have to take a break because I got tears, I'm so empathetic, I guess.
Do you ever do pet stuff, like for deceased pets?
I have done a collar. I did laser engrave a collar that was supposed to go around an urn, but no, that's it. And I didn't know that. She called me up and she says, "Hey, I need to get my dog's name laser engraved on a leather collar." I was like, "Yeah, for sure." Boom, here you go, drop it off. Da, 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 da. And then she picks it up. And she's like, "Oh, that's so beautiful. This is going to be great and perfect." And I was like, "Oh God, what's going on?" She fell apart, and I was like, "What in the world's going on?" And she's like, "We had to put him down last week. He was 15 years old." And I'm like, "Oh, I was like, oh, that's terrible." And she was like, "And then we just had our first baby, and he loved him." I was like, "Oh my gosh!" So pets are just as bad, if not worse, in some aspects as losing a friend. Definitely not family, but
I don't know. My pets are my family, so.
Yeah. No, I meant like you would, if the neighbor dies, you're like, "Oh, yeah, that's terrible." The neighbor's dog dies, you're like, "Oh my God, that's terrible."
Right, because like in my case,
I like my neighbor's dog more than I like my neighbor.
So I learned dogs' names before I learned people names. And this is so true, like at gun shows. Like, I won't know the vendor's name, but I'll be like, Fiona's dad. Because Fiona's the dog. And everybody knows Fiona the dog. But I don't know the dad's name. I just know that it's Fiona's dad.
You belong there. That's funny, as I had